So firmware upgrade, we may ask you when you call in for support what firmware version your controller has. If you're looking at the system object, you'll always see the firmware version no matter what tab you're looking on, what object. This firmware field up here, 954A version 3.3. But on the system object, system tab, there's also this software revision. So if somebody asked me what firmware version I had, I would say I have firmware 954A version 3.3, software revision 5. Somebody in support might say, oh, upgrade to version 3.3, software revision 12, or upgrade to version 3.4. And that will work better with whatever it is you're trying to do. And so there's really two different ways to upgrade firmware. One of those is using ASI Expert. And so when you first find the controller, you get this update firmware button that you can click on and then point it at the firmware file that you've downloaded or that we've sent you. And then it will upload, give you a little progress, depending on the path, meaning Ethernet, serial, or otherwise. It will, once it's done, then you do need to reset the controller either by cycling power or by clicking the reset action button. And then it will check the new firmware file that you've loaded and start running it. There's an alternative way to upgrade using the USB port on the controller. So you can copy the file to a flash drive. It needs to very specifically be named 9540.bin, which is not the typical name that we give them. The names normally have a version number in them. So you could just copy it and rename it. And that 9540.bin name is required, whether it's a 9540, 9520, 6115, any AC3 version, it's looking for a file named 9540.bin. And so if you press and hold that service switch while you insert the flash drive, you wait a few seconds, there's a LED near the service switch that starts flashing. Once it starts flashing, then you can reset power to the controller. And then the yellow LED normally flashes once on startup, and then you can remove the flash drive and you're done. That usually takes less time, but you've got to do things maybe in a not quite as intuitively. You might worry more about, am I doing things in the right order? I think more people use ASI Expert to update firmware. I mentioned there's some wireless options, and in the system object, there's this Wi-Fi tab. So that's where you would set up the wireless information. If you insert it, use one of our IntelliFi modules. So you need to know the encryption type as well as the SSID is the network name, the private key is the password. So you would need to include those.